software engineer in the IBM WebSphere team, and Tech Data domain architect Philip Leeper. I'm Lisa Hedlund, and I'll be your host today. So we're going to run for about an hour, and just a brief look at today's agenda. So Cindy High from IBM that will cover today's first three topics around why migrate, what's new with WAS version 9, including Liberty, and then also application migration tools available from IBM. Then my colleague Philip Leeper will take over and guide you through an overview of Talos, the middleware configuration management solution for Tech Data, and then the migration in action demo. And finally, we have the open Q&A session where you have any questions you might have in the answer, so they can hand those done. And as I mentioned, feel free to send across any questions to me during the webinar, and I'll make sure to cover them in the Q&A session. With that, I'll hand over to Cindy to present the first part. I think you should have the control now, Cindy.
Okay. There's a little bit of background noise if folks want to go on mute, but please interrupt if you have any questions along the way. Happy to take any questions as we go through. So the big thing, you know, is into service is coming up here really quick for V.7 and V.8 of WebSphere Application Server, and this was really driven to get these both into service at the same time, which is very unusual, but this is driven by their Java SE6 end of service, and you know, towards the end of this year, we won't be able to get any more fixes, anything applied to that from Oracle, no security fixes and things of that sort. So it's really driving the need to you know, remove use, get off of Java SE6. So we've got the end of service dates here, April 30th for V7, V8, for end of support for, you know, Liberty running on SE6 was last year. End of support for Java SE7 on Liberty is 2019. You know, we'd really encourage you to move on to Java 8. You know, Java 7 will end in the I don't know the dates. Didn't have them. I realized I didn't have the WebSphere traditional SE7 dates on here, but we know that Java SE8 will go further. I've heard the dates 2025. It's planned to, you know, have an extended life, kind of like Java SE6 has been around for a really long time, and we intend that Java 8 will be usable for quite a long time. So I really encourage you to be on Java 8 on all your app servers. So what's come new in 8.5 and 9 and Liberty over the last few years? You know, and we introduced Liberty in 2012. It's pretty amazing. It's been around over 6 years, coming up to 6 years now. And it's got ND, it's got collective functions. In V8.5, we introduced intelligent management, Java SE8. See, even 8 has been around for quite a few years already. When we introduced Liberty, it first had the Java EE6 web profile capability, but we delivered Java EE7 first into Liberty, and it was the first application server certified for Java EE7. In the 8.5 spectrum of things, traditional WebSphere is Java EE6. But it got upgraded in V.9. If you're looking for Java EE technologies, EE7 technologies, that's all available on WebSphere V.9, and both are full EE7 compliant. We've gone to a model with Liberty in the 9 time frame of continuous delivery. We come out with a version of Liberty every quarter, and it is continuous. You can upgrade. It's zero migration. We'll talk about that. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but it is coming out in a continuous delivery fashion. Just to show some of the history and directions, you know, over the last year, we've, you know, the EE7, we've worked a lot on our cloud delivery mechanisms with Docker and WAS as a service. We're adding, you know, more and more functionality as far as micro profile, IBM Cloud Privates growing, and just a lot of exciting things going on with WebSphere and Liberty and the cloud experience going forward. So we know that your applications are, you know, those are your assets, and we don't want them to be your liability. So, you know, moving them forward, innovating with them is important. And some of those things that we've recognized are the use of open source, the use of some people are looking and starting to deliver microservices. That's interesting to some folks. Containers is the, you know, new unit of deployment. It gives you a lot of flexibility. It gives you so much capability and reproducibility of your environments, and to that end, you know, we've put a lot into the development of Liberty and its composable nature and ability to create exactly the application server you need and want, and no more. You know, you build into the server exactly what you need. You don't have to have the whole full stack of Java EE7 if that's not what your application needs. And we've, you know, put a lot of work into that area. So if Liberty is something you have considered and or think you might be interested in, I'm going to talk about that with regard to the source migration tools and how those tools can help you look and evaluate Liberty for your use. Of course, if you want to stay with traditional WebSphere, we've got great options for you there, and we can help you migrate up to the latest version of V.8.5 or V.9 and get you up to the latest capability. But I did want to mention what we have done was exciting. Towards the end of last year, we open sourced all of our base Java EE7 Liberty capability. It's out in open source. It's available to look at, to use, and our WebSphere Liberty product is based right on top of it. So it's got Java EE7 microprofile. It's under an Eclipse license. It is really our go-to platform for Docker and cloud support, just because it's easy use and its configuration capabilities. So check that out if it's something you haven't used. So our application migration tools is what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on today, are the two tools in the middle. We have a binary analysis scanner and a source scanner. And these tools are really good for looking at your applications to figure out if there could be potential issues from moving up Java EE levels, Java SE levels, if there have been API changes or things of that nature. You can run these scanners against your code, against either your binaries or your source, to quickly find out, you know, what might be gotchas in your applications as you migrate and move forward. So the the command line tool is migration toolkit for application binaries, and there's a link here for download. And it is super simple. You download it, you install it. It really just unpacks it, and it's runnable with a java-jar command on either an EAR file, WAR file, or a directory of applications. And it produces either a JSON or HTML report. By default, it's HTML, and it gives you all kind of insights as far as what's in your application, what are potential migration issues, and so forth. And you can use this tool, typically traditional WebSphere to Liberty, but if, say, you can use it for traditional WebSphere to traditional WebSphere upgrade. You could use it, just if you were updating your Java version on your TWAS or Liberty app. We've also just added some JBoss to WebSphere support in the binary tool. We've had competitive migration support in the Eclipse tool and have more there, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But it's super simple, and the information it produces is quite useful. One of the first tools you can use with that is the evaluation report. And what that does is just scans your applications to see if there are technologies that you're using in that application that are not supported on Liberty, or, if you would to see if it's a good fit for Liberty. There are some technologies that were not brought over, that they were deprecated in Java EE7, and like JAX RPC, there's Entity EJB beans. So there's various technologies that aren't in Liberty, and this report will give you a quick, at a first glance, to see if your application could be a good fit for Liberty or not. So there's a handful of those things that you do want to check for. But after you, say, get a good report for running on Liberty, then you can do actually, let me go back here, a deep dive analysis report that will really go in and look at any behavior changes that we might have experienced between levels. It would, check your Java EE levels if you set your source and your target. You can also set a cloud target if you're going to migrate to a cloud platform, and really get down deep and look at each of the potential issues that might affect you. Some of these might be like just warnings to say this interface in Java SE is now throwing an exception versus a null pointer. You might not need to change your code, but just be aware of it in case you start getting an exception you weren't expecting before. So that can be very useful for just heads up information of what might have affected you. There's also this inventory report, and there's a lot of hidden information in this. Not hidden information, it's right there, but a lot of information about your application. It'll tell you how many servlets, how many JSPs, how many different type of beans and JPA entities. It goes through and kind of evaluates what all is in your application. It's really useful. Somebody new's taking over an application, they just want to kind of understand what's going on in there. It gives all kind of information about the jar files. I don't know if you guys find this happens to you, but we see a lot of applications that they just end up having things dropped in it, and the next developer doesn't know why a particular jar is in it, but they they don't want to take it out because it was already there and they're not sure what's going on. This kind of gives some analysis of and some evaluation whether, do you have duplicate jars in there? Do you have jars that don't appear to be used? Did you put WebSphere jars? We've seen, issues that have come in through our level 2, level 3 services where folks have application issues because they've dropped old WebSphere classes into their applications, and then those start conflicting with their application server for class loading issues. So it looks for all those things and gives a good deep analysis of your application and what's in it, and some guidance on removing things that aren't needed and things of that nature. It's really good, powerful report. All right, so, oops. Yeah, we got through that. And so you can actually get all these reports. Used to be you had to, if you've used this tool before, you had to generate each report individually. Now you can get it with a -- all option. Actually, by default, you get all 3. You get the evaluation report, the detailed analysis report, the inventory report, and the last thing you get, and then you can get this individually as well, is a feature list report. So this code scanner will go look at all the packages that your applications are using. It evaluates those against the set of features and recommends the list of features that you enable in Liberty for to build the right composable server. We do have some kind of convenience features. You can set up one feature to say Java EE7 and just use it all, have it all. But best practices says build the server you need, and then it will start faster, load faster, and get your applications running faster. And that's one of the nice things about Liberty. It is a very, very quick start, generally less than 5 seconds, up and running, and your application's going. On each of these, in the detailed analysis, it gives you the ability to have detailed help, which typically will link off, explain the problem, link off to different articles and information in the Knowledge Center, and try to explain the issues that's being flagged so that your developers can figure out what code modification, if necessary, is needed, or what you might see different in, say, a report, or this is an example of a rounding change in Java SE, just to let you know these things, little things have happened that you want to be aware of. We have a source scanner tool. It's an Eclipse tool. This is definitely what you would expect developers to use if they're using Eclipse. They can certainly use the binary report if they're not. It has a greater source server list, including more other vendors' application servers. It goes back farther. It goes back to traditional 5.1, where the binary scanner goes to 6.1. And again, it's got the same set of rules. It provides the same set of help in that tool. It just runs on Eclipse and flags your application source. It's built into the IDE. You've got an interface to choose your source and targets, and if you're going to be running on a cloud platform, are you changing Java SE levels, and it gives you that flexibility to configure your rule set and then do a static analysis against your source using all the rules that are made available. And then, your list of issues come up on this tool. Then the developer has the convenience of double-clicking on an issue, and it jumps to the line of code, opens up the source. Then there's a help portlet that describes the issue. In the Eclipse tool, there's 2 levels of help. There's that first introductory help, and if you notice, there's a detailed help link in each of those help issues that will bring up the exact same help that you see in the binary scanner. The help for the help is, like I said, it's the same between the two tools, and the same issues are flagged in both. And you can go to wasdev.net to find these tools. They're free downloads and for you to grab. And that's it. So any questions?
We haven't got any questions coming through, but they might save them to the end. So thank you.
I will hang on.
Yes, perfect. I'll hand over then the control to Philip.
Yeah, thanks, Cindy. Really good, interesting stuff going on in the world of Liberty by the sounds of it. So right now I'm going to give you just a brief overview of Tech Data's tool Talos and how you can use it to configure your middleware that you have in your environment, deploy your applications, and generally use it for management. So currently, the state of the middleware market is it still continues to grow, perhaps moving more into rather than a monolithic, into a sort of microservices approach, but still that middleware platform is growing. And along with that growth, there's been an increase in the amount of tooling that you use to be able to spin up those environments, deploy those applications. For example, by 2020, 50% of the CIOs that haven't transformed their capabilities will be displaced by the digital leadership team. So saying that basically changes is happening, it's happening now, and if you're not doing something about it, then you're probably a bit behind the curve. So there's some statistics about DevOps and continuous integration, continuous delivery that are kind of mind-blowing when you see them written down. So 46 times more frequent software delivery, software deployment, 440 times faster lead time for changes. So these things, I mean, even if you take them with a huge pinch of salt and divide them by 10, they're still very compelling. So yeah, everyone definitely should be considering the move to continuous integration, continuous deployment. So I'm going to describe now how Talos fits in with the DevOps tool chain. Well, that's what this agenda will do. So a lot of these challenges, for example, migrating from a traditional monolithic infrastructure into microservices on Docker containers, wanting quicker release cycles, wanting to migrate to the cloud, having too many people focused on performing activities on your environment. A lot of those things are what comes out of the traditional way of managing middleware. So obviously, DevOps is the answer to that. So this is the age-old problem of cost versus quality versus speed. You can only have two of them at any one time. So who is Talos for? So Talos is for users of middleware who want to either migrate to the cloud, it's very useful in that scenario, or to use generally as part of your SDLC process and just drive that better operational control of your middleware estate. At its core, it's a configuration management tool. It talks to many large popular middleware platforms and also has integrations into cloud platforms and container environments. And so obviously there are lots of tools on the marketplace, such as Puppet, Ansible. So Talos is similar, but provides a toolkit-based approach that allows you to address every one of your middlewares in exactly the same way. So everything appears in the same view. And I'll show you a bit more on that later. There are features within Talos that allow you to easily visualize your current compliance status, track your consistency on a day-by-day basis, get notified if there's configuration drift, and give you that automation of your environment to the extent that it doesn't really matter where you host it. You can redeploy at any time, rebuild your entire environment, almost at the drop of a hat. So where does Talos fit in with modern DevOps tooling? So it fits in really in this kind of continuous delivery section. So this is the creation of your middleware platforms, the creation of your environment, your management of your configuration and keeping your configuration as code, and the deployment of those application artifacts onto your target. Now, obviously, this is not used in isolation. None of these tools are. They all form part of a set of tools that you decide upon. So, for example, you could use this quite happily in conjunction with Jenkins, with Ansible, with Kubernetes, with Terraform. So you can you construct your tool base and you create your solution around that. So as I said, in terms of orchestration engines, we can use Jenkins, we can use Ansible, Urban Code Deploy, and HP Operations Orchestration in order to kick off all those activities that are being executed within Talos. And we can talk to the public cloud as well. So Amazon Web Services, Azure, we have plugins for, as well as IBM Cloud. And obviously, VMware instances you can treat like they are essentially local instances. And we can also assist in migrating to microservices. So our solution supports Docker and Red Hat Atomic as target build-out environments. And we're soon adding OpenShift, and on the roadmap is IBM Cloud Private to add to that to take advantage of the Kubernetes platforms that are emerging. So this is a rough view of the middleware platforms that we support. So IBM Data Power, WebLogic, Tomcat, JBoss, F5 Big IP, MQ. We have plugins, toolkits for each of these middlewares. And as I'll show you later, you see all of the configuration of all of these middlewares in the same view, in the same way, and they're all held in the same canonical format within Talos. So we do have a kind of finite list of middlewares that we support at the moment, but on the back of any reasonably sized project, we will we can offer toolkit development as part of that project. Typically, it's about 8 weeks. Depending on complexity, but yeah, we can provide that implementation if the need is sufficient. So just to touch on a couple of case studies. This is a bank that uses a large implementation of WebSphere Application Server, traditional WAS, and they were essentially not managing the environment in a very efficient way. So by using Talos, we basically cut the time for build and deploy by about 93%. So what used to take 40 man-hours now takes 2.5 hours. Another example, this is a financial clearinghouse. This is in the US. Yeah, we allow for a 75% reduction in delivery time on that environment. And that was delivered in 4 weeks, so it was a relatively short and swift engagement. In summary, Talos is a part of your DevOps toolchain. So you can use it in conjunction with orchestration engines and container platforms in order to effectively manage your middleware platform, your middleware configuration, and your application deployment. So, that being said, let's have a look at Talos itself. So, this is Talos. So what I'll be doing through this demo is showing you a migration from a WebSphere Application Server 7 fixpack 45 instance to WAS 855. So this is the WebSphere 7 environment. It's running a little application, a simple dictionary application. There we go. So it's a very simple dictionary application, uses a MySQL database in the back end just to look up some search terms and return some information. So that application is currently running here, but what we want to do is read that environment in. So front and center here is middleware instances. This is how we refer to all of your WebSphere Application Server, JBoss, WebLogic, MQ, whatever it is you have. And your two options here are create and discover. So what we're going to do is discover what else? 7005. 45. So we're going to discover that using SOAP. And so I'm just going to take these the values here for deployment manager, hostname, the credentials for logging into the machine, for logging into the instance, the WebSphere Application Server instance, and the path of the deployment manager, and the SOAP port, which I know is 8879. So when we do that, what we're doing is we're connecting over SOAP, and we're using the information that's available through SOAP to just be able to garner information about the topology. So what does our cell look like? How many nodes have we got? What clusters do we have, etc. So that being done, we can see that this topology has been discovered. And with that done, we can perform a read configuration, which what that's going to do is go out to the WebSphere 7 instance and just start pulling back all the stuff that we know about that environment. This is operating over JMX. That's how it's connecting to the server. This could also be using REST in some instances, or SDKs provided for particular middleware. Basically, whichever way we can get access to a middleware, that's the way we start pulling back. And we just pull back every piece of configuration. And you can see that's done now. So what we have now is basically all the information that we need about WebSphere Application Server 7, this environment that we have. So in order to create a new environment, what we can do is clone that. So we can take this topology and we can say, I want to create a new topology called test2. I'm going to call it WAS 855. And if we look in here, this is the installed WebSphere version here is 7, because this is what's been pulled in. So in my clone, I want to make this an 855. and we've got Fixpack 5 available to install there. And the other thing we need to provide here is just a bit of information about the host name that we're going to, and how to get onto that box. Once we've provided that, if we skip over to Jenkins, which is the orchestration engine that we're using to orchestrate this, we'll see that we've got this environment that's been created. And if we ran that, it would take 15 to 20 minutes, but that would create us our WebSphere Application Server 855 base environment on the target server. I'm not going to do that right now because I don't want to wait for 20 minutes for that to finish. So in true Blue Peter fashion, here's one I made earlier. So this is essentially this WAS 855 instance. This WebSphere Application Server instance is a base instance with nothing on it. When my screen refreshes, I can show you that. There are no application servers running on this environment, and this is the URL where the application would be hosted, and there's currently nothing running there. So let's go back to Talos. So we have our base WebSphere Application Server 855 image, and we have our WebSphere Application Server 7 image. So what we can do with this image, because we've read in the configuration here, what we can do is create a template based on that configuration. And we just need to give it a name, and we can go and start picking out some of the configuration that's within this configuration set. So, for example, I know that I want the Diction Web application because that's what's providing my my application there, and I need the JDBC connection to MySQL. Now, there's a couple of places here where I need to change some values between environments. So, for example, my cell in this environment is called cell 01, and I know that there are a couple of places where that cell name is referenced directly within here. So what I need to do is go and create a variable out of this config item and say that that is my cell name. So I'm creating a variable there called cell name with the value, whatever my cell name is called. I need the same thing within this server configuration item. So what I'm going to do there is just go and link that to the existing cell name variable that I've just created. So you'll see there that gets replaced with this cell name token, and the cell name value down here gets updated to that value. And similarly, there are a couple of places where the specific host name that we're using for this server is referenced within the MySQL configuration. So once again, I'm just going to set the DB host name value and again reuse that existing variable within another value. And that is, as far as it goes with the template, that's all the configuration that I need within that environment. So I can save and close that. And that's my configuration for that application stored as code, essentially. This is taken the configuration from the environment and just stored the the files required, the pieces of configuration required for that application, along with the application deployable, the EAR, or the WAR file. So if we then look at our WAS 8.5.5 environment, let me remove that old template, and we will add we'll add this one, for example. Then that applies that dictionary web template that we've created to this specific environment. So where in this environment we have no clusters, those clusters will be created. The MySQL database will be instigated, and the application will be deployed. So because we've applied that template here, if we go back to Jenkins, the test1 WAS 8.5 configure project, if we execute that, that will apply that template and create a payload out of that, and then push that payload to the target machine. So we're going to execute that, and then we're going to go, because that's going to take 3 or 4 minutes, we'll have a look at some of the other features. So because WebSphere Application, because Talos is pulling that configuration in and storing it in a canonical format in JSON, it gives us the ability, when we've read in a configuration, to then compare that, for example, with another piece of configuration that we've previously discovered. This is actually comparing a WAS 8.5.5 to a WAS 7.0.0.5, so there's probably a lot of configuration differences, but that's something you can do. So, for example, we can see that there are some extra configuration differences in the 8.5.5, obviously through the fact that changes in the version. That's probably not the best way of showing that. But we also keep a list of all the versions that we've read over time. So when we read in a configuration for WAS 8.5.5, we can then go back and compare that with previous versions that we've read in at different times, which might be so for example, there's plenty of differences here too. So that ability to compare over time the differences between configurations that have been read in gives us the ability to schedule a job every day, for example, or every week or every month, however often you like to see it, and measure whether there's been some kind of configuration deviation. I actually don't have any because these are all new environments, but this job runs every night, and if any changes are detected overnight, for example, then they would be highlighted here, and I'd be able to go in and see those differences. We can also see some more information here. So all of the activities that are executed by WebSphere Application Server are sort of printed out on the screen. We can see, for example, these ones are all running as part of the job that we've just kicked off in Jenkins. And this is a kind of overtime view of all of the executions that have taken place per middleware instance. So this test1 WAS 8.5 has had 150 executions, and most of them have been successful, some have failed. We can see, breaking down by individual activity, what those failures were. Execute script failed quite a lot, for example. And we can also see a breakdown by user, so who's done it. So sort of compliance job that's running overnight, admin is my main user on this environment. So there's a lot of information there to allow you to get that information over your middleware estate. We also have the ability to schedule jobs. So this default compliance job is the one that's kicking off every night and reading in those configuration files. Or we can run individual activities. So, for example, from the WebSphere Application Server activity, I can run a apply web patch, for example, and schedule that to run, every month, for example. So, with that, we'll go back and look at this. Seems to have completed, so the WAS V.9 configure job completed. I'm going to have to switch network again. Hopefully I'm not going to lose network again. Actually, yeah, okay, so this is the URL that's running the dictionary application. If I refresh that, you can see that dictionary application pops up, and I can start using it. So that's been deployed. It's been migrated from WebSphere Application Server version 7 straight into WebSphere Application Server 5.5. So obviously the biggest part of this process, probably the bit that's going to take the longest. I mean, obviously the discovery was seconds. Reading in the configuration was a minute or two, if that. The write out of the configuration was maybe 4 minutes. So the largest part of this process is obviously going to be in that template creation. So you're going to need to spend a few hours probably making sure that the template that you create is right. But the benefit is once you've created that template, that then becomes the core of your SDLC going forward. So that's the core of your continuous integration, your continuous deployment from the perspective of these middleware. And you can start tying that in with your other CI/CD tools. So hopefully that's given you a good insight there. There's one more thing that I'd just like to touch on. So we have the ability here, if we go into our dictionary access, to transform. It's an ability that at the moment is only WebSphere Application Server to WebSphere Liberty. But as and when we discover more situations, then we can create those mappings. But we can transform a template created for WebSphere Application Server into a template created for Liberty. So if we do that, it's a relatively quick process. It gives us. Let's have a look at what it creates. So the structure of the information is slightly different because it's Liberty-based, but all the same information is there. So DB hostname within the MySQL database, the name of the MySQL connection, the dictionary application itself, and the target it goes to. So with all of that in place, what we can do, we have this integration with Docker. So we can create a container image based on Liberty. And I'm going to give it a CentOS latest. This is using the continuous integration version of Liberty that Cindy was talking about earlier. I'm going to add a server to that, server 1, and next. So we can take that template that we created, and we can add that to the environment. I just need to populate the host name and MySQL connection location. So I'll go and grab those. Excuse me, I find it very difficult to talk and type at the same time. No good for demos. Space there. So for that information embedded in the template, then we can save that and build a Docker image out of that, which is going to go through the process of installing Liberty. It's using the archive version of Liberty, so it's going to, well, the first thing we'll do is get a base version of CentOS to start off the process. So it gets that from the Docker repo, the Docker Hub repo, and then it pulls down media from your media tree for the Liberty installation. It unpacks that information and creates servers that it needs to create. Then pulls down your latest payload that you've got from your latest template and the latest application EAR file, and then relatively quickly you've got a Docker image that's been created. So from that image we can create a container. So dictionary 1, we need to give it a port, so 9080, 9081, that should possibly be the other way around. Yeah, 9080, 9081, and a variable set to base it on. Those variable sets can be dev, test, production, so that can be your way of separating between environments. And then we spin up a container image, and that's now running. Okay, and yeah, after a fashion. So this is that application running in this port 9081 that we set within the Docker image, within the container instance that we spun up. And obviously, this being Docker, we can create another container for test, another one for production, for any development environment. And just to give you a kind of view of the roadmap, we're extending this, we're in the process of extending this now to allow you to push out to OpenShift, to IBM private cloud, to basically any Kubernetes-based container platform, which can then allow you to do that kind of rapid scaling and A/B testing and canary releases that Kubernetes gives you. So that's probably it for me. So thank you for bearing with me through all the networking issues. So just to recap, what we've done is done a migration from WebSphere Application Server 7.0.0.4.5 to WebSphere Application Server 8.5.5, just using Talos and templating to push that environment across, push the application across, and at the same time creating a reusable SDLC, a continuous integration, continuous deployment tool for you to use, and then putting you in a really good position to then take that, take your existing estate from a monolithic into microservices container-driven environment. So, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Phil, and thanks. So that kind of leads us to the Q&A session. I haven't received any questions during the webinar, but it's not too late. If you do have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the questions, or you can use the chat function if you prefer. So give it just a few minutes. If you have some questions, let me know. Or maybe
I'm speaking. Can I have a question?
Yeah?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Your tool is possible migrate on phone, video tool commerce servers, please?
We do have a plugin for WebSphere Commerce Server. We generally rank our plugins on effectively fullness of implementation. So, for example, WebSphere Application Server, WebSphere MQ are very, very thoroughly tested. They've been through many iterations of customers. Unfortunately, Commerce is one of those ones that hasn't been through so many iterations. So, the kind of fullness of implementation may not be 100%, but that's the kind of thing that gets worked out within engagement. So, if there were an engagement, then we would certainly be adding to that very heavily.
Yeah, because commerce servers, background as application web servers build this take quickly, but deployment of e-commerce background is take 60-20 hours. Okay, so second question. How is possible to clone DB2 database, Oracle database related for WebSphere or JBoss or Tomcat, or if it's possible to migrate MySQL and Postgres database, because each company use a different database background for their application, yeah?
Sure, yeah.
How is it so I guess possible to?
I guess it depends whether you're talking about the configuration that allows you to connect to those databases or the databases themselves. So
okay,
if it's the configuration that allows you to connect to those databases, then yes, that's exactly what this is for. So, one of the changes in your application might be to move from, I don't know, MySQL to Oracle. So the configuration within the middleware would change. You would edit that configuration and you would push that configuration out, and that would update everywhere. If what you're talking about is the database itself and the data itself, no, that's not generally covered. It's not really the same thing. It's not a middleware. It's a database.
Philip, imagine any situation, yeah? I have production environment where is running any WebSphere application server, background database is, for example, Oracle or DB2, and I need to deeper investigation, and I will using your tool. It means that I should restore database from my backup?
So I don't think I'm fully understanding the question.
I'm sorry for my English, but for example, I have running any production environment with WebSphere, and background is a database as Oracle, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have any very big problem on prod environment, then I need to clone with the database. The database should be restored on cloned environment from the backup, or can I use your tool? Because I don't understand clear your...
I see what you're saying. So, you would need something else to be able to handle the database then. You would need some other way of cloning that. I guess what you're talking about is something like a snapshot VM image or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be preferable to trying to do it within Talos. It's we did go down the road of trying to create integrations with DB2, for example.
I understand.
It took us too far away from what the tool is meant to be doing, which is configuration management.
Okay, thank you. That's all from my side. Thanks for a nice presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? I haven't received any more questions through chat. So I think that's it then. So with that, I'd like to say many thanks to Cindy and to Phil, of course, for presenting to us today. And also big thanks to all of you who joined. I hope that you found it useful. And again, I'll make the recording available within the next couple of days. And do feel free to reach out to us for any questions. Most of you should have my contact details anyway. So I've been communicating the WebEx details, etc. So thanks again and have a great rest of your day.